G'day, welcome to the MacPack.
We're back.
My name's Shane McKenna, and to my left this week in order, the man on the panel who is the biggest Harry Potter fan. It's my little brother Joe. How are you, Joe boy?
You're a wizard, Harry.
And to my right, coming in at 6'1", as he does each and every week, is the baby brother of the pack, who we call Junior Boy. Junior Boy, how are you, mate?
The Harry Potter references will make sense soon when we announce what guest we have on this week.
They will indeed. This week we have a little bit of radio royalty.
That's right.
Indeed.
Mr. Liam Stapleton joining us on the line, which is rather exciting indeed.
That's huge, Jake.
We are discussing his accolades in a little second, so you get a little bit of a well-rounded idea as to who Liam actually is.
Yes. It's great for us to talk to us. We're embarking on our community radio journey.
Yeah, it's funny. He chatted about starting off in community radio, and now he's basically built his way up through the leagues, doing the big league stuff now. Very exciting indeed. It's massive. Let's get into it. Boys.
Brother Mingos.
How are we all? Are we all well?
Going well, Jake. I'm pumped for today's episode. What do we got?
Big episode of the podcast today. Most of our listeners would probably be aware that over the last 9 months or so, we've been doing a fair amount of community radio in addition to the podcast.
Yes, 107.9.
And we've been fortunate enough to get some fantastic radio-specific guests over the journey. Obviously, Matt O'Kine from Triple J Breakfast.
Yep.
Even Tim Blackwell from Nova.
Yep, sir.
And today's guest is sort of a link between the two in some regards. So we've got Liam Stapleton on the line. He is, probably most people would know him from either Triple J Breakfast, which he did with his good mate Ben a couple of years ago.
Yep.
He's then gone and done some Nova stuff on Breakfast, and now he's doing Late Drive on Breakfast as well. But if you don't know him from either of those two things, you probably know him from his TikTok account where he does a bunch of different impressions of Hogwarts characters, of Borat, and most of the time he just pisses off his wife whenever he gets the opportunity. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the studio and to the podcast, Mr. Liam Stapleton. How are you, mate?
Jake, Joe Riley, pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
How's things? You're obviously in Melbourne at the moment.
Yes, in Melbourne. It's actually a decent sort of sunny day, which you don't get too often. I mean, I say sunny, but it's like, 11 degrees. But look, take that. At least there's like no cloud cover. But that's the thing. Often like the clear days without cloud cover, you obviously have cold mornings. So, but I'm sort of used to it now. We've been here for like a year and a half now.
There you go. Fantastic. For those who are probably a little bit unequipped with who you are, can you maybe give a quick summation from your side of things as to who you are, Liam?
Yeah, I mean, well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, if it's not from the Triple J days, or Nova, it's, could be from TikTok. Like, I still, people sort of will point at me sometimes and just be like, Triple J. Like, Triple J. Yeah, I haven't worked there for like coming up to 5 years. Or my favorite one recently, I was at an airport. I was in Brizzy actually. And a guy ran up to me and he didn't say anything. He just pointed at me and went bing bang bing bang bing, and then so that was him just doing a bit of cock and butt check, bit of Borat. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I suppose I've sort of done enough things here and there over the years that maybe some people know me from some sort of random things here and there, but yeah, I would say, for the most part, still pretty unknown. I can just go about my life without people doing Borat impressions at me too.
Obviously, you're a big radio figure in Australia. You started doing community radio at age 14. How did you get into it at such a young age?
Yeah, well, I'm stoked you guys are community radio fellas. It's always something that I've preached, and like whenever anyone asks, like, oh yeah, like how do you get into radio? It's just like it's actually really easy. Like this thing called community radio, like you can do it, and you won't get paid at the start, but like they'll literally give you a show. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose like when I was younger, like I was really into my sport, like played soccer and that sort of thing, and yeah, I don't know. I really like, to be honest, it's a weird in when I think of like what was the origins of it. I became obsessed with a show called The Mighty Boosh. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
like so obsessed and loved Noel Fielding and really started like enjoying comedy and stand up, and obviously, Hamish and Andy, legends in the scene who are sort of at their prime around then. So I was like, I know I want to do something in that world. I don't know exactly what. And there was this station called PBA FM out in like the northern suburbs where I grew up, and they did this like community program where it was like I suppose it was like for almost like school holidays, really. They were just like, oh, like we'll take, a couple of people from the council who are interested, and yeah, they can, try their hand at radio. So that's how it all started. The old PBA FM. 89.7, and yeah, so I did a show there a little bit, and then after that I moved to a station called Fresh, which is like an awesome community radio station in Adelaide, and you're certainly like pretty lucky to be working at Fresh, because it's community radio, but it also feels like it isn't. It's like it's like a dance music station, and at the time when we were starting, it was like dance music was pop music. You know how country music's kind of pop music now?
Yeah.
At the time, it was like, Avicii Levels was coming out, and like, all that sort of like, Major Lazer and Diplo, and that was kind of the thing. So yeah, we definitely worked there at a good time. That's where I met Ben and sort of started things. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. You made mention to Ben. How did that sort of partnership sort of begin to grow? Where did you meet him? How did that situation start?
Yeah, so he was just in a similar boat at the same time. So Ben's a little bit older than me. Ben's 30, he's turning 31 in a couple of months, and I've just turned 28. But just we were sort of like, we're from similar areas. Like I'm from the northern suburbs in Adelaide, and Ben's like from like regional sort of north. And yeah, we were both sort of doing stand up at the same sort of time, and we were also both working at Fresh at the same time. We'd never actually met. I mean, you guys would know what it's like community radio. It's like the death metal show right after Asian cooking, and then the Filipino prayer group are coming in for half an hour, and so it's like very much like it's a bit of a mismatch sometimes, and it's a bit disjointed. So you could be on the same radio station as someone, but if they're on Wednesday at like 4 p.m. and you're on a Tuesday in the morning, you're like literally never going to cross paths. So it was a bit like that. Like I did a Saturday morning breakfast show with a guy called Big Al, who's a legend, and he was like in his late 30s at the time, and I sort of like, through mutual sort of connections in Adelaide, everyone knows everyone. I mean, you get it, you're from Perth.
Yeah.
It was like someone I went to school with, her mum worked in insurance with this guy who did a community radio show on the weekend. I was like, cool, like I'll come in and sit in with him. And yeah, he was a legend. Like he let me come and sit in with him every Saturday, and you know how things start in community radio, you sort of just like get addicted to it. And then he let me come on, sort of be a sidekick a little bit. And Ben was sort of doing like a mid-dawn shift. And then one day, the drive show on the Tuesday, it was like a different drive show every night, and the drive show on the Tuesday were like sick, so they called us both separately to fill in. And so we met like a half hour before our first show.
Right.
Yeah, which is kind of trippy, and we were both sort of very much at the same stage of life. And then he did another show with a guy called Nathan, and it was like Ben and Nathan at the time, but he
doesn't have the same ring to it.
I think he made the right choice. But yeah, he had a kid, like, and so he was sort of like, no, I'm not doing this. And it's a bit of a, like, it is a real commitment, I suppose, when you got to remember that you're working full time at the same time.
Yeah.
Like Ben was waking up on the dairy farm doing that, and then coming into the city and pumping this show out. And we just sort of, we just loved it. And I think the biggest thing that we had, I suppose, is like we're probably young enough to be able to properly throw ourselves into it, Like when I was sort of doing this stuff with Ben, I was like, 17, like I was still in year 12. And then we just I was doing like uni, and I just boned that after like a semester.
What were you studying?
I was studying media, actually, so at least I was in the right sort of field. But I kind of realized, I was like, I don't think this is going to get me a job in radio. Like,
Yeah, fair.
you guys study media or whatever. Like to be a journalist, obviously you need a journalism degree. To be a lawyer, you need a legal degree. But I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of like doing it already. Like, it's sort of like I feel like I just focus my attention on this, and then hopefully it leads to something. So that was sort of the origins of everything.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Fair
When you
enough.
met Ben, at what point did you kind of realize we're on here? Like, we've got the good chemistry. We reckon we can run the long run.
Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose
It wasn't like a first little time you
No,
learned.
like we got along we got along really well, and we were mates quick. But I think we were just equally committed. Like I know that seems like a weird thing, but when you're trying to start out, if someone's like dead keen and the other person can't really be asked and they're not really going to put much effort in, it's just going to fall over pretty quick. But we were both like so committed, like, oh, well, this is what, like, this is what we want to do for the rest of our lives. So we were sort of, doing like some pretty mad hours for, no money for a couple of years there. And, and like same with anyone like starting a band or doing anything, you got to sort of got to give it a bit at the start. But yeah, I suppose like we got a paid job at Fresh. Like they hadn't had a paid position ever before. And
cool.
we were lucky to be the first people to get paid there. So it was sort of like we were doing like the Wednesday morning breakfast show. And then we did the Wednesday, Thursday. And then we did the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then there was like one show left who did the Monday and the Friday. And then they like announced this position. And we actually had another guy called Michael, who was our producer at the time. We actually didn't know what producers were or what they did, but we just knew like proper radio shows had to be. we went to Fresh and they had like minimum wage for 2 people, and we were like, what about 3 for the price of 1? So we were getting paid like peanuts, like literal peanuts. But we got the gig, and it was like, that was, to be fair, like at the time we're like, oh my God, we made it. Like we're getting paid to do what we love, like, so that was a trip. And we're both doing stand up and stuff in the Adelaide sort of scene at the time. And then I think like naturally it was just sort of like, I don't know, it felt like you would do stand up to try and get a job in radio. That's how I always felt anyway. So I was like, I definitely enjoy radio more in the sense it's like you have an idea and then you just do it.
Yeah.
It's just like the constant turnover, like, turn over 3 hours a morning.
Don't need a crowd to sit in and watch it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and if it's bombing, you can't see it.
Play a song, yeah.
That's it. Yeah, you just find out in the ratings like 3 months later. So it's we just sort of loved that. And I think so when we had that position, we're like, okay, like we threw ourselves into it even more, and then we were just like pests to bosses around the country. Like we would just like fling out like emails and just reach out to people and like people on air and people, bosses, and ask, hey, like we're Ben and Liam from Adelaide. Like, can we come over and like have 5 minutes of your time or like watch your show? And so we like sat in on Kyle and Jackie O, we sat in on Hamish and Andy, sat in on Fitzy and Whipper, like, and met all the sort of bosses around town. And we had Tom Ballard on our show during the Adelaide Fringe, so we like texted him like, hey, what's the boss's like name at Triple J? Like, do you think you could give us his email? Or
cool.
So we reached out to him and had a chat, and then like 6 months later we were sort of employed there, which is sort of blows your mind. Like, that was definitely the big step up. Like I think whatever happens, if it all ends tomorrow, or we do something else cool, I think you'll never go from like community radio in Adelaide to like national breakfast. Like that was definitely the biggest jump.
Yeah.
Maybe it was even a little too soon. I was 20 when that happened, so it was just it was pretty young to process that, and like moving to Sydney and moving out of home for the first time and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't regret any of it. Like it was that was such a cool time.
How did that sort of thing sort of come to happen? Do you have meetings with the team at Triple J, or like is it literally?
Yeah, they sort of we were sort of told at the time that like, hey, you guys, like we literally were told like you wouldn't like work here, not really what we're looking for, in the sense.
See in 6 months.
I know. The ABC is big, rightfully so, on diversity, and we're not very diverse. Like we're
that's fair.
white straight guys from Adelaide. You know what I mean? Like, but I think that's why they also were like, oh, well, Ben's like kind of regional. Like, play into that. Like, he's I mean, he was literally a dairy farmer. Like, but yeah, we sort of got the vibe that Matt and Alex were leaving, because they asked us for like a demo, and then they asked us for like another demo, and so we were coming in at like 2 a.m. and recording a show, like a fake show for Triple J, so then no one at Fresh would know that we were doing like this secret show, and then we'll go into our actual show, because the breakfast hours there's like no one there before you, sort of thing. So and we were just like constantly sending them these demos, and I think we probably like killed the competition purely from just how quick our turnover was, because we had access to like a studio, and we're sort of like probably getting to that point where we're like looking for the next step. Like Fresh was so cool, but we're like, oh, okay, we want to like challenge ourselves a little bit and see what else is out there. We've done it for 2-3 years, and but yeah, there was also offers in the meantime for like different sort of spots and regional, and we actually had another contract with a company that we haven't worked for yet. Well, yeah, hopefully never. We love Nova, but at the same time, like we could have gone either way, sort of thing.
Right.
It was nowhere near as good of a gig, but we yeah, we were sort of at that point where it was like, okay, we're gonna be moving somewhere at the end of the year. And yeah, when we got the call and we found out, we're just like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, and then like now I'm sort of remembering it, like it's so weird because we sort of had to keep it secret, and we had to like after the show one day we like flew to Sydney and did a photo shoot and then came back real late and so the next day. Yeah, then it ended up sort of there was like a bit of a leak sort of thing. So we were like, I remember Ben and I were literally at the pub on like a Friday, like probably like a month before it was supposed to be announced. And we were like halfway through lunch, and I had a few beers to be honest, and we got a call.
You're at the pub, you're allowed to.
yeah, we had a call from the boss, and they're like, "Hey, it's gonna come out, so like we're just gonna announce it like now. I'm just gonna like announce it right now." And we're like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, just go to the ABC in Collinswood and we're like, we're doing this now," and we're like shit, like really, like is that? And then we're like, fuck, okay, like then we just got in like I don't even think it was the Ubers around then. Yeah, we got in an Uber or a cab, and yeah, it was like then we were just like thrown on with Veronica and Lewis. That was our sort of first time.
That's crazy. You're hammered. You're blind out of your mind. Don't remember any of it.
Yeah. No, we weren't battling that hard. It was still like fairly early in the but it certainly wasn't, which is probably good in a way because we like sort of ripped the Band-Aid off. But then it was like, yeah, I think the photos had been taken by that point. So it was like out.
Yeah,
in
cool.
and out. Photos were up, and yeah, like it was sort of like so trippy. Sort of driving back, and Adelaide's half hour behind, like hearing yourself whilst I was driving back to the Burbs, like on Triple J, and like phone sort of blowing up with like just mates and stuff. Like what the hell, like so it was pretty trippy. It was also funny, like I can remember even from word go, like before we'd even ever spoken a word on Triple J, like you're sort of thrown into the limelight a little bit, if you will. And like I remember like there was people just like so off us before we even like the hell are these guys? Like like people off you before you'd even like started. And then there's also people like, oh yeah, good, congrats. But yeah, it's kind of wild thinking back to that. It's a little while ago now. I mean, that was like 2016, like 2016 when it was all announced. So yeah.
Yeah, so you obviously went from like Community to Fresh, which was a bit of a step up, and then to Triple J. All in this, like you were quite young still. It was a pretty quick pace of time. How much did the show sort of change from when you started when you were like 14 up to when you were on Triple J?
Well, it was funny because we were sort of, I suppose Fresh runs like, it feels a bit like a commercial station in a way. It's not, but like they had clients and a sales team, and it was like for sponsorship sort of thing. So it was like pretty slick. So Fresh is a lot more similar to Nova than Triple J was. Like Triple J is just stylistically, it's so different. So I think we were, I mean, we wouldn't have been slick, but in our heads, we were slick. So like that was probably one of the big things when we came over. They were like, oh, and even our boss was like, oh, like just tone it back a little bit. Like it would text like these guys sound so commercial radio. Like we'd never worked in commercial radio, but it's like it was just faster pace. Like people still pay Triple J out for like, hey, like Triple J, like cool bands over here, like the vibe. But it is sort of not like you go to some sort of course where they tell you to speak like that, but it's like a little
it's heavily
laid back. Like it's supposed to not sound like Nova, say, or like quick boom 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 cash prize giveaway, Taylor Swift, move on, like so it took us a little while to get the hang of that. Like you almost want to sound like you have no idea what's going on. Like I feel like things would go better when you just like cared less, or like appeared to care less, or just like put things out there like we would do like phoners like, did you ever meet a kid at school and then you went back to their house and saw their home and how it smelled, and then you were just a little bit off them? And you get like easy calls for that. Or would be like, oh, are you gung ho and feng shui? Just like, what even is that? But it's like people just, I don't know, people like got around stupid stuff more. Like sometimes you know, over, you got to be a bit more direct. Like last night we had this call, we were talking about like sports days and because of the Olympics and stuff, and she'd been hit in the eye by javelin and it like just missed her brain. Like that's insane.
Right.
We're like very basic 101, but we're just like, what hit you? And then last night, man, we had some awesome calls for like what hit you, but like we do a lot more like basic between the eyes sort of stuff now, I think.
Literally.
Yeah.
Did it feel like because now you're obviously quite successful at Nova, did it feel almost as if you were like putting on an act when you were at Triple J, or did you feel that you and Ben suited that style?
Yeah, I think so. Like you always, I mean, yeah, for sure. Like I feel like even now, sometimes you always have imposter syndrome. Like you sort of feel like you need to, especially being that young, like I suppose more so now, it's like, oh, we're very comfortable in our own skin and it's just like, you just do you. But at the time, it's like, okay, well, you know, you can only go off what worked and what got you there in the first place. And I think it was very, very much, we were sort of very like respected, I suppose at Fresh, because, you know, the smaller scale, but like we'd, you know, all those people there and maybe the people who listened to that station as well could see how much like hard work we'd put in over the years. But I suppose when you start at a new station, it's like, who are these dudes?
Yeah,
like
true.
they don't know you from a bar of soap sort of thing. So you just have to sort of start from like ground zero and work your way up. And same deal with Nova, really, because there's probably a little bit of crossover here and there, but a lot of people when we started at Nova Adelaide doing the breakfast show there, it's like, okay, well, you know, I might not know. If they didn't listen to community radio or weren't into cool tunes, they've just been listening to FM the whole time, they wouldn't have a clue. So you sort of got to start again. And then same deal when we moved to the Melbourne breakfast show, you could be forgiven for never hearing a word. And now late drive, like you constantly have to sort of, you know, not reinvent the wheel, but you sort of got to try and get your personality across and reintroduce yourself. Yeah. And I suppose anyone in radio, that's just the way it works. I mean, unless you're doing the same gig for like a decade, which, you know, there are some shows that have done that, but yeah, we've moved sort of every 3 years, really. We're just doing the next thing.
Yeah, that's fair. How did you find sort of introducing yourself on the Triple J stage? I know at the time it was pretty challenging. There was a lot of criticism. I think a lot of it was unfair. As someone who was on the inside, how did it sort of feel when you go from doing community, you get your first big gig, and then for the large majority, a lot of people just like knocked you for the sake of knocking you?
Yeah, oh, dude, yeah. And that's the thing. I think like it went for about 9 months. It was brutal, especially because, and you know, even, you know, I don't know what it's like these days, but I know I saw Bryce Mills recently. You know, he's a powerhouse, but he sort of moved on and mentioned some of that stuff, and you know, it's sad that still happens. I think it's insane that you can have a tech like the Triple J text line's like so cool. Like it's like one of the great things about the station. And it's also one of the worst things because it's like you keep calling rogue messages from all over the country, but it's also
not
having
filtered at all.
Yeah, no. When you're starting out, you're like, oh, this is so bad.
You could do a keyword sort of.
Dickhead, like bring back XX. Yeah. I think. But you know, I think we're stronger for it. We definitely got thicker skin, that's for sure. But yeah, and I think sometimes people think that like, oh yeah, like, you know, it didn't go that well at the like. I think it was quite publicized because I sort of spoke out about how I was feeling about a lot of things on Are You OK Day. But we also had 2 like ripper years after.
Absolutely.
To be honest, after Are You OK Day onwards, it was like happy days, man. Like it was like it sort of feel like when we sort of called it out. That sort of, I don't know, people got off our back.
Yeah, 100%. It very much felt like that. The moment that you sort of called it out and was just like, yeah, bro, enough's enough. The sentiment seemed to be, yeah, that's fair enough. Like we've sort of given him enough shit. Yeah. He's just a bloke as well.
That's it. And people still to this day, like I'm sure like when you had Matt on, he probably mentioned as well, like that it was like, oh, bring back Tom and Alex before that. And like people are always going last. You know, or like they have their own thing that they grow up with, and I get like that it's your sort of era. Like even I feel pretty out of the loop now. Like I'm well, I mentioned 28, but I'm like sometimes I'm like, man, I'm so not across the new artists. Or sometimes I like Fontaines DC and Idols, like a couple of my favorite bands, but they like don't like Idols get played on Double J, not Triple J.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can feel out of the loop quick, but yeah, I don't know. It's such a funny thing. It's just like it's in my head. It's like, oh yeah, it's just like a different era. Like I've lived in 2 states since then and done 3 different gigs. So
Yeah.
I definitely, all in all, though, very fond memories. And I worked with so many great people there, and like that was one of the cool things about Triple J is it's like it's sort of, I mean, you guys would know with the community radio stuff, but it did have a bit of a community radio feel, and like that everyone was just sort of in it together. Like it was good, like camaraderie and good team environment, and like everyone was sort of like very sure of like what they were doing and what they were building, and especially those like big things like Hottest 100 days, like crazy. Like you're obviously not, but like you do feel like a little bit like the station's like the center of the universe that day. Like
I feel like that day it kind of is. To be honest. Yeah.
It's like the grand, it's like the
I think
grand final for radio.
Yeah, no, it kind of is. So and so many people worked really hard on it, and so yeah, that was definitely one of my like pinch myself moments when we got to the first time we got to do the top 20. That was kind of so cool. And then also, you're so nervous, and then you think about it, and like I'm sure the presenters would feel bad about me saying this, but you 100% realize like when you're listening to the countdown.
Yeah, the last thing you're worried about is what the presenters say.
Oh yeah, shut up! Like play the like, what's next? Like sort of. So that was kind of calming and freeing, sort of realizing that as well. But it's like, oh, no one actually really get like you can't really stuff the countdown.
Yeah, as long as you play the next song, you're fine.
Yeah, you play like number 1 at like 8. I think that would be pretty bad, but bar that.
Yeah, I mean, they do that at the Oscars and people forget about it. So it's all good.
Yeah, it happened on Australia's Next Top Model one time, I think.
Yeah.
When you did Hot 100 Days, did you how prior to like presenting it, did you know who won? Like, does all the Triple J office know day of, or is it like you find out?
Nah, like it's pretty top secret because you can bet on it and stuff.
Yeah,
cross my mind. You only find out your section. So the day we were doing the top, like we did it once, and I think the first time we did it, because we like just started, we would have been on for like a couple of weeks, so we did 40 to 20. So we only got like 40 to 20.
Yeah.
And then the 20 to 1, I think was Veronica and Lewis that year, they would have known. And everyone just gets their 20.
That's cool.
But yeah.
What about like when you have someone on the line, like when Billie Eilish won it, you called her up and stuff like that? Or like when the Wiggles came in.
Yeah.
Surely you see the Wiggles walk in.
They're not coming in for third.
No, well, it's that they also, for example, we were speaking to Gang of Youths when Kendrick won.
Yeah, okay, right.
Oh, yeah.
They were second. They probably thought, oh, well, we're in with one, but nah, like they sort of, and we couldn't get Kendrick. So it's like,
so Dave, you're up.
Yeah, you could have someone in there and they're like fourth. Yeah, I think Flume went in both times he won, but yeah, you sort of, I think we found out just say at like 10 a.m. Like we got the list and we're like, oh, and then you just the people that would make the production, I suppose, would know, the people that run the station, and then the presenters, but it's certainly not like all the staff just know. Like it's sort of they do keep it pretty secret.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
That's sick.
Yeah. So obviously the Hot 100 is a big one, and you obviously talked to some big guests. I know you talked to Liam Gallagher, which was a highlight. What other moments are your favorite at Triple J?
Yeah, I mean, Liam Gallagher, definitely a highlight for me. Yeah, I got to spend like half an hour with him because Ben was in Japan actually. So I came in, it was around Christmas. And it was also the same like week I got with my wife as well. So it was good. I was having a good week, man.
Was that before or after you'd met Liam?
Was it? I think no. It would have been. Yeah. Well, I knew her from around the traps. We grew up around the area, but we got with her at Falls, and then I think it was like 2 days after Falls.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I was going to say that Liam Gallagher confidence could do anything
Yeah.
to anyone.
Come on, darling.
Yeah. You just rock around like that.
But yeah, because I remember talking to him about like falls, and he's like, I saw that bump, man. Well, they're the dung ruts. They're cool. They're cool. Proper cool, man. They got that bullshit song. I like it. Yeah. And yeah, he was great. So I've actually got one of my prized possessions is I didn't get many things signed over the years, but I was a big Oasis fan before. So I have a definitely maybe record, and he signed it to Liam. Love Liam. Come on.
That's so sick.
Yeah, that's framed in my house, and yeah, but I don't know. We've had some cool. We did Billie Eilish probably like 3 or 4 times in person, like definitely like varying levels of like. So we would have done 2 like versions with it. We did the one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know. We did one when she did like a Michael Jackson song, Problematic, and yeah, she was like pretty young then. Who I loved interviewing Bring the Horizon. That was really cool. I'm a big fan of them, so I sat down with Jordan Fish and Ollie Sykes. Same deal. Ben was not there for some reason, so I did like a longer form one with them. And yeah, but I mean, probably my favorite memories of Triple J are like some of the stuff that we did. Like we did this thing called the Skid Pig, where Ben's old car, we
I've seen this. Yes.
Yeah, we drove it up the East Coast and like pimped it up. So listeners would like put a spoiler on it, and we like go through different towns. You know, someone would be like, "I'll do a paint job, or I'll give it some rims," and like we did that for real, and then gave it to a listener at the end, which was cool. So Skid Pig was fun. Yeah, that was probably one of the most memorable bits we did there. I was like, I had this thing. I was DJ LimeWire near the end of our Triple J run, and like because I found my old iPod from like circa 2007, so I just uploaded all the like in its order, like so I think there's still a Spotify playlist on Liam's LimeWire Thumpers circa 2007, and people still message me like, yeah, I listen to that like playlist all the time. But we went around, we went to Canberra on like the DJ LimeWire tour, and I played a there was this listener's house, and we had like pre-drinks there, and yeah, we just played. And all the Splendors were super cool as well. That was like, you know, one year we were working Rage and Triple J, so we would do our like live broadcast from the tent, and then like go out and then like have to interview the same bands, but just for TV this time, which was actually pretty hard. You'd like it had like a different rapport, but yeah, that's sort of, and that's, to be honest, where I met Tim Blackwell. He's a real Splendor rat. He loves it. So I camped next to him a couple of years on the trot. So
that would have been an experience. In 2022, in 2020, obviously now talking about Tim Blackwell, who we've made mention to, one of Nova's finest. You joined the Nova team. How did that come about before we sort of get into anything else?
Yeah, so we actually, the Nova bosses actually reached out at the end of our first year at Triple J, and you know, it was one of the big names that you sort of know from the industry, and so it was like, oh, there's a bit of a big meeting, and I remember I went home that day and I was really sick, so I had a nap because I was like dying, and I woke up at like 9 p.m. and I had like 30 missed calls on my phone, and I was living in an apartment. So Ben was just like at the bottom of my apartment, like calling me. So I slept through the meeting with the big bosses at Nova by 4 or 5 hours, and he rocked up by himself late because he was waiting for me, and they didn't call us back for 2 years, which is probably fair.
Oh, what? Is that legit?
Yeah, legit. Yeah, no, yeah, 100%.
So this is in like 2018.
Yeah, so that would have been 17, and then we touched base again in 2019. Yeah, so,
you'd woken up by then.
yeah. I was like, oh man, I really cooked that. Like that's the word. Like one of the words. I think that sometimes. I mean, it just wasn't meant to be, but I don't think they were like offering a job or anything. It was more just to like
have a chat.
Have a bit of a chat, get to know people, and yeah, they offered us Adelaide breakfast at the end of 2019.
Yep.
It was tricky because, to be honest, like at that point, as I said, we were having a really good time at Triple J, and it's like, well, like you look at it and I was like, just turned 23. We've got a national like breakfast show, like, and also you got to remember like Triple J, like the idea of commercial radio is like, you know, basically like, okay, well, you know, I'm joining a terrorist militia sort of. They like, it's like the Antichrist. They hate it. Like,
Yeah.
so, but man, we're really going to do that. Like, and then, but also we had ambition to move into commercial radio. Like we sort of always did. Like and people were like, oh, like that always annoyed me. People were like, you sold out, man. It's like, what? Like, bro, I was on community radio before even Triple J. Like I sold out when I moved to Triple J. But we were, and I'm so glad we made the choice. I loved working there. But yeah, I don't know. We who knows? We may well have still been there, but I think it was actually a scary thing to do at the time because, like, obviously all our people in Sydney were like, why would you do that? Why would you go back to just Adelaide when you're talking to like the whole country?
Yeah, that's true.
And then there's also that thing of like, well, this is going well, and we could move back there, and it could all go to shit and like not go well, and then it's a lot more cutthroat in the commercial game. So even though Nova have always been good to us, like who knows? Maybe if it's not rating well, they get rid of you in a year or 2 years, and then you're like, oh man, like I probably could have worked for Triple J for X amount. So it was like, yeah, in hindsight, it's like, oh, yeah, obviously you do that, but yeah, it was a really tricky decision at the time. It's like, what do we do here? But yeah, I mean, it was a cool thing to do because then we got to do Adelaide Breakfast for 3 years and had the best damn time, and then got offered Melbourne. So it's funny when you like look back, and I suppose it's like the decisions you made back then sort of informed where we're at now. And now Late Drive, which is a gig that we're just like loving. Like it's a bit of a piss take really. We only do like 2 hours and we don't have to wake up for breakfast hours anymore. So like what a dream. And we've got like our whole team. So it's Ben, myself, and we've got Belle, obviously, who was actually our producer at Triple J, and then we brought her over to Adelaide. She produced for 3 years, and then she did a show in Melbourne. And Andy was our EP in Adelaide, and then Scudder, who's our audio guy, he's actually from Renmark, from the Riverland, and also did community radio. He was actually a Fresh guy, and then Jack, our video guy, was also at Fresh. So we've actually like got a lot of people that and then we've got Tina, who is a legend as well, who's one of our producers. So we you guys just like F you with this big team.
We need mum to have another kid. That's what we
and the MacPack mum and dad.
So you mentioned being able to sleep in these days. What were the days looking like when you're doing breakfast nationally to now doing Late Drive nationally? What time are you getting up? What time are you getting to the office? What time are you leaving?
Yeah, well, I got up at 3:50 back in the day, and also did that I did that from 2014 to the start of this year. So I did a good decade of waking up.
That's nuts.
What time are you going to bed? Like, are you feeling tired by like 5?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I'd let the boat out a little. Like the Triple J was the hard years because it was like that's the cool thing. Like they support all the gigs. It's like, do you want to go? This weekend, or do you want to go, and a lot of weeknight gigs, they're doing some side shows, like I better go to that. So I definitely let the boat out a bit more. Probably didn't look after myself as much back in those days, but I was also like young. But I don't know, like 9, like it's sort of hard. You've just fallen asleep. I tried. I used to nap a bit, but then like when I lived
Nova meeting.
Never napped since.
But I know, right? And then I haven't napped for a long time. Just to sort of zonk me out a little bit, but now it's very different. But I mean, this morning I was still up at like 5:30 because I dropped my wife to work at like just after 6, and then take the dog for a leisurely walk. I walk him for an hour every day, and then went to the gym for an hour, and I edited a video just before, sent off a work email, and we send like an email of like, oh, what's around and like ideas we have for the show tonight, and then speak to you guys for an hour, and then I've got a phone meeting with one of the Nova bosses. Then I've got an hour golf lesson, and then I'll go to work.
What a day.
I know, right? How good's that? So I'll be starting at like, I don't know. What will I start at today? Yeah, like 2:30. 2:30. That's pretty good.
Bad. Yeah, I'd say that.
So it's way better. But I'm I don't know. I think I'm trying to like just make myself busy during the day. Like I think job, you could be a real piece of shit if you wanted to. Like now, I don't even have to rock up until lunch. So, yeah, try and keep sort of active during the day.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You obviously talked about it before, but you started doing breakfast on Nova at the beginning of 2020. Obviously, the pandemic sort of kicked off only like 30 odd days after you'd started. What was that? What was that sort of feeling like when you changed your job, changed your career, and then the world sort of stopped on a dime?
Honestly, like, I think COVID was actually good for us. I know that sounds, and I know, like, especially living in Melbourne, like, people had a really rough trot. I mean, you guys, you're in the People's Republic of Perth, you were just doing...
We were doing anything. We didn't even get COVID.
Yeah, we just heard about it when we were doing this research.
It sounds bad. We had a couple of weird lockdowns. We had Pizzagate, which was like, they're like, oh my God, like, they locked the whole state down, and then turns out, yeah, there was a bit of I think someone was like dealing drugs from the pizza shop, something like that, and that's how it was actually. Yeah, it was this whole thing. Look up Pizzagate. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. You might get a cease and desist from the pizza shop later on, guys. But it was like a false alarm. It was like someone had lied. Someone had lied. It was like, oh no, that didn't actually happen. There was a lot more contact going on than just like ordering a pizza.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, like, you know, obviously Adelaide wasn't as bad as other states, but to be honest, we were like nailed it, because as we said, we're like, oh no, like, do we move or do we? So we got to move back for the 3 years COVID was on.
Yeah,
like, if there was any kind of dip on the eastern states, it was to like go back and be with our family and friends, like, whilst the world was going to shit. And it also, like, I feel like it leveled the playing field a little bit, because we came into Adelaide and we ended up getting our first number one, like, in like the third book that came out. We're like, oh, well, that was easy. We didn't get them again like the whole second year, and then we had them on lock by the third year, which was cool.
Sick.
It was kind of good for us, because we were like kind of like, all right, well, like, it was annoying in one sense that we had a lot of ideas that got shut down because of it, but then ideas came from it as well. Like, there was, because people were like getting lockdown haircuts. We were like, oh, we should do like barbershop roulette. So we put like 10 haircuts on a wheel. We like span it and like whatever it land on, we'll do that. And obviously it's because you're like, where am I going to be? Like, it's not a big deal. Ben got the George Costanza. I just straight up George Costanza'd him straight away. And I got the World Cup Ronaldo 2002.
Yeah, right.
The Duke, the R9. So I like had my full head shaved and just had that little and then we also had like, yeah, we got this show limo called the Ben and Liamo, which was like we just like sort of hired it from some dude for like a few months, and we just like branded it all up, and then we'd like go around and do the show from the limo, and like would drop groceries to people, like, and do like things, you know, you could do stuff like that, like people that were in lockdown, or like just brought people food and that sort of thing. So like it was all contactless and that sort of thing.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, but then on the flip, there was like things that we like built up. Like I did this thing where I was like, you know, on the back of receipts, how there's like they advertise stuff, but it's always carpet cleaning and just like random like tax accounts and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, we need to get into that market. Like you know, no one's advertising their radio show on the back of receipts. So like, it's a bit of a piss take, but we end up getting like put on like thousands and thousands of receipts, because they make the rolls, like that's like the month of rolls, and like all Big W, Coles, Woolworths, they all use the same rolls, like from the place. And so like I was like, oh, you know, normally they have some sort of offer, so it was like, text this number for a free carbonara, and it was obviously a joke. Like I knew that was going to cause more problems down there. We were having like thousands of texts for like, oh, my carbonara, and like on this like burner phone. And then so we were like, oh, we should do this event where like we'll go to like the drive-in cinema, and like have like, we were literally like throwing this around, like the idea of having like a pool or a spa full of carbonara. And then, anyone who would come and like would watch a movie. And literally, dude, I'm not even kidding. We had this company, like this Italian company, like in Adelaide, they fully made like hundreds and hundreds of carbonaras for us, like packaged it all up, and then like the night before, it was like we just got put into lockdown. So I was like, shit, man. We had so like everyone in the office was just taking home like kilos of all the carb, and like, so we're like, oh, that's so annoying. Like we went through all this thing that so there's things that didn't happen, but looking back, I'm like, it was just like everyone, that's just like all anyone could talk about. But then we're like, in a way, it was like, all right, well, what ideas are in that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, and once again, like I'm so glad we're in Adelaide and
That's
could
true.
actually, have 10 friends over or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and when the dancing came back, it was all happy days. But if it had gone the other way, would have still been in Sydney for it, or after we moved to Melbourne, and both those places didn't have as much of a pleasant
There
time
you go.
as
Good point.
How do commercial stations compare to like a Triple J, or just different kind of time slots on shows compare to getting the backing behind crazy ideas like that? Like Hamish and Andy used to do just dumb
Yeah.
stuff, and it would be hilarious. Do they
sort of
do they just like you doing that stuff, or they be like, oh, it's gonna be too hard?
It sort of depends. Like, I suppose our shift now is more like we're just focusing on probably like a little bit more on like it's a little bit of a different time. Like breakfast is more like stunty and like tactic
Yeah.
stuff. And you're like, oh, what are we gonna do? And so now it's very much like RTJ as well. Like
Yeah, yep.
familiar with the show. It's a bit like it's really really funny, but it's just like it's pretty much like that's the show. So we're sort of probably a little bit more that style at the moment. Like we do like skits and like muck around and do that sort of stuff, but it's very much like a punchier sort of thing. So there's not like lots of long arcs. So our sort of theory is like, it's like, oh, well, people are rooted at the end of the day and they just wanted to switch off and just listen for a little bit. So, but yeah, we were lucky in Adelaide. I mean, Adelaide was just like, it was nuts. Like, because it was, I don't know, the ratings were good and we were just sort of, I don't know, we seemed to just be able to do whatever we want. We had like a show chopper. We had, we wanted to like, have like a human billboard. So it was like, there was like a billboard and it was like like an arrow saying Ben and Liam, and then we were like hanging in front of the billboard. And so that's like, and Nova just like fully paid with their own money to like build this scaffolding and then crane the scaffolding on top of this like 8-story building. And then like the scaffolding was all in place behind the billboard. And then we were like in harnesses and we had like harness dudes like there. And then we were just like, we just hung up there for like 4 hours sitting there and just doing the show. And we're just like getting people, we were like, saying like, oh, if you've just tuned over from another station to find out what's happening, like give us a call. And people are like, yeah, I was listening to Triple M and then I saw you. I'm like, oh, you're gonna stick around? And then like we'd like call on the next day and they're like, hey, you still listening? And so that sort of stuff's like really
That's
really
very cool. All right,
but yeah, I mean Triple J, like we like that Triple J do a lot for the amount of money they have. Like they don't really have like they really like it's that whole thing of like the government sort of thing.
Yeah.
They the one night stands and all those sorts of things they do is crazy, but they don't have like there's no such thing as like a show budget necessarily. So like for example, Skid Pig, we were sort of like paying for the spoilers and that sort of stuff. Like we were like, we wanted to do that stuff, so we would like sort of put our own money into it a little bit. But yeah, it changes all the time. Like sometimes like guys, we're in the wrong era. Like if we're doing radio in the 80s, would have been a good time. Just like everything. I mean, it's like literally a cost of living crisis. So there's less money to be like, oh yeah, you want a helicopter? Cool, yeah, we can do that. Like, he's sort of it changes. It changes from time to time. And once again, at like Fresh, there was we didn't have when Michael left, we also didn't have a producer or a video guy or whatever. So we just like have mates to be like, hey, I bought the camera gear, Ben bought the audio gear, and it was like we just would convince people to be like, hey man, can you come like film this thing for us this weekend?
Yeah, right.
And do all that sort of stuff. We'd like answer our own calls sort of thing. So you'd be like, you're like, oh yeah, give us a call. And then like quickly like in the song, like rap, answer things. Like, oh, I don't know, I've got a pretty good one. I reckon mine could be the last one.
Sounds exactly what we do.
Yeah, well, I love that. That's how it all starts. So, and yeah, obviously the longer you go through it, sometimes the more hands and the easier it gets. So we've got a really good moment, and that makes things a lot easier and a lot more fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, cool. You've obviously been doing radio for a fair period now. What do you reckon is your favorite part of the whole concept of doing radio?
I sort of already touched on it, but I think the turnover, just like it's sort of the best thing about it. I think it's also like sometimes it's the worst thing about it because you're like, Jesus, like it doesn't matter what you did the day. It's another blank 2 hours. So like, how are you gonna fill it, sort of thing, or like, what do you want to do today? So that's probably the coolest thing, like the chase of just like trying new things. And I still love doing a new phoner, like when you haven't done something before. Um, it's it's like I don't know, like there's so many that you do. Oh yeah, like every 6 months, like roll that one out again. Like that. It's like, you're gonna get good calls for it, sort of thing. But when we think of one that we like haven't done before, it's always like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
nice.
good. Like I'm trying to think of like one recently. I think we did just like I think I mean it was a bit like it's a bit dirty, but we're like is anyone having can't even remember how it came up. Oh, it was like Australians are having less sex or something like that, or like is anyone having like sex like right now? Like if you're like mid session, like don't call if you're and then we got this call from a guy who just said he was having a bat in his car. Like amazing. But like and that's also I would say the callers, like the call best when you just people just say the most rogue stuff. Like, are you talking about like is that even a thing? Like that's crazy. Like so that helps. And we love like good callers and we get a real kick out of that. Like some radio shows sort of like they're like having written on the screen like what the caller's going to say or so just have a bit of up of where it's going to go, but we very much like sometimes a throw line. So it's like, Jamie, this was actually your sister's party. What happened at the house party. But we like to just like find out in the moment. Yeah. And same with our own things. Like if I've got a story, I'll tell the producers, but I won't tell Ben or Belle.
Yeah.
And like it comes with experience, like sometimes you might be like, oh, you might want to sort of go this way a little bit with it, or like, hey, just give me space because I've got like a lot to get through. Yeah. So, or like, hey, there's really not much in it. It's like a real quick thing. So if you want to pick, like, have fun with that.
Yeah,
we give each other sort of directions like that, but won't say, oh, this thing happened to me on the weekend, because then that's always the best.
Spoils it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. What about butchering? So what's the biggest butchering you would have had on air?
As in like the worst?
Yeah.
Chocky Milk Pong comes to mind. You probably wouldn't. It was like O week when we first started at Triple J. And we're like, we got to do something for O week. And I'm like, what even is O week? Like I went to uni and I didn't get it O week.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and I'm like, what is that? Like, how are we supposed to? Anyway, we're like, what about beer pong, but it's with chocolate milk for everyone? Just wasn't a good. It wasn't really a good fit. But oh man, there's always stinkers. Like any given week you have a couple. We're like, oh, that didn't land. But that one certainly won't go down in the history books. But people are like, oh, remember you did that thing? Like, did we do that? So good. I like some of my favorite bits are honestly some of the stuff we did at Fresh still. Like we're always like trying to make noise and do things all the time. So it actually what later turned out to be the skid pig, Ben's car.
Yeah, yep.
We did a thing. We wanted to race our own car, and we both had really shit cars. Like I had a 498 Laser with just like full rust on the top, which I ended up actually trading for a PlayStation 4 when I moved to Sydney. But we were like, why don't we like take our cars to the quarter mile? So we went to we got in touch with like the Speedway when they were having one of those drag sort of races. So there's big cars that like sort of make your ears explode, and we like got our like shitty cars out and did like the quarter mile in like 20 seconds or something crazy. But it was like such a fun bit, and we were like, oh, like if you want to sponsor us, like call up and we'll get stickers made. So if you've got a business or your mate's name or whatever, and we'll like slap it on that. And I was like, such a cool bit. Like we were so young at the time, but I'm like, I still think that was so fun because I was just so nervous doing it and being especially when the crowd was there and stuff, and like everyone was like laughing because it's just funny, like like crappy cars going that slow. There's also one from our Adelaide time. Speaking of, it reminded me when we were talking PlayStations. Ben got a PlayStation 5 from PlayStation, and I was like, "Where's my PlayStation? How come you're getting a PlayStation 5? I'm not getting a PlayStation 5." No, he does more like he's more of the games guy. I don't really play games, but I was like, I want one. And then he was like, you have to do something for the email of this, And it was actually my idea I was like, oh, why don't I was like thinking about some things, like, what could I do? And I was like, I'll run a marathon. And then we're like, actually, like, should we do that? And I'm like, yeah. So like the next day I did actually run a marathon. It was very slow, but I ran a marathon with like zero, like, it was just
training.
like, we said on like the Monday, like I'm going to run a marathon. I did it on the Tuesday.
That's
And
fun.
it cooked my body.
Yeah, it would.
But it was like, I don't know. It's like a good memory now that I'm like, that's so funny that we actually tried that. Like,
And did you get the PlayStation?
Yeah. So I actually got a higher one for like a week. I got to like have a go on one. I got to have a go on the PlayStation. But that wasn't really for that anyway. You know, it was more.
There you go. You get the PlayStation for the same length of time you did the marathon.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
When you were coming up through the ranks of community into Triple J into commercial radio, did you have any like big mentors or pieces of advice you received along the way which helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, we actually did that. I did another pod last night called Everyday Conspiracies with a guy called Sean Craig Murphy who runs Australian Radio School in
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you heard of that? Yeah.
I've seen you go back every now and then and do a little bit of a...
Yeah. Ben and I we speak like literally every, I don't know, 3-4 months. We just chat
cool.
coming through just as a like sort of we did it and remember people speaking at it. But he was really great and gave us good sort of advice at the time. Our first boss, Tom Martin, is a legend. He's one of the bosses at SAFM now. But yeah, he was awesome. He was like probably like my age now, I suppose, when he was like our program director. And would give us some great advice in those early sort of days.
Have you got any worth sharing? Have you got any advice?
I mean, just a few that like off the top of the head, like structure creates freedom. I mean, I know it's kind of like it's like when you sort of know what you're doing, like, and everything's sort of planned out, then that sort of creates freedom. It's just like, oh, well, I know we can come back to that. And I think we're like better at that now. We're only just sort of working that out now, but it's like, oh, cool. Well, like I just had this idea from this caller, so we'll just do that for half. And then that show that we planned is like, we can just do some of that tomorrow. Like, so that's a big one. And conviction and chemistry, like they're two of the most important things. Cause it's like, you can have chemistry, but if you don't really care about what you're talking about, then it's kind of arse. But like, do you know what I mean? Like, for example, Hamish and Andy could talk about pirates for like an hour, and if they were like both they were convicted, their chemistry is obviously just gonna be like a great chat. So, and same deal. If someone's like really wants to talk about something, but they have zero chemistry, then it's gonna kind of suck. So, they're the two important ones. I always like come back to the analogy as well of like kneading from the same dough. So, you try and just get more blood out of the stone is probably the wrong. You probably if you're beating it that hard, then it's probably not. Really good. I touched on it earlier, but the woman who called through for when we were talking about sports days, and she got a javelin through her eye. So we're like, okay, like what hit you? And then we got another like 8 great things what hit you. And then there was one call that came through late, and it was like a guy who got hit in the head with a shot put when he was 8, and like split his head open. I'm like, oh man, that's so brutal. But we took that off air, and we'll play that on Friday for a thing we do called Second Chance Talkback, which is basically all the calls that were too late. They will just sort of take them off air, and you know what I mean. So then going from like one person calling up, we've got a whole nother 2 bits out of it.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, you try and just you look back and go like, oh, is there anything like more in that, or like can we do anything more with that? Or sometimes you have an interview. And like, for example, this week, you're just going to think we're just like this grotesque show. Off the back of the high jump guy.
Yeah, I listened to this one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We had the guy with the biggest dong.
Yeah. He was the micro-penis bloke as well.
Yeah. So
I thought that was Joe. I thought Joe had called in.
Yeah. I didn't get through. No.
Because we had the guy with the big, like the high jump thing happened. So then we got the guy with the biggest dick in the world. And then he said, oh, like you've got to give people a warning because a few times like I've put out this massive hog and people have like, had a rude shock. And so we're like, oh, surprises in the bedroom. And then, so you mentioned you heard it. And then so it was like, we said, oh, were you surprised in the bedroom? And people just calling up with like random stuff. Like someone's like, oh, yeah, like a big photo of his mum above the bed or like someone he was hung like a cashew and whatever. Like, they're good examples of, yeah, one thing leads to the next and the next to the next. So that you're cooking then, that's for sure.
Yeah,
because
perfect.
So now
let's-
now a lot of people know you on an international scale from your TikTok impression videos. Is that something you've always been good at, or you've been working on it?
Very nice. Yeah, no, to be honest, it's funny because that's been very much like this year I was like, I am gonna work hard at social media. Like it was a thing. So
Looks
I'm
like it's
I'm gonna
paying off already, I must say.
Oh, thanks, man. No, I decided I wanted to do it more in April last year. I went away with my dad, and I don't know. I just like I had this. My first probably post of like, having a crack at a reel, I suppose, was I was on the train over there, and how they, I don't know if you've been to the UK, but on the tube, it's like cock thistle, will it be way, and they all have like funny, like. And so I was like, like sitting on British trains, and I just literally like filmed myself for like 30 seconds just like sitting on the train, and then after I just like voiced over like cock thistle and like did the cocksbush and like geez, I don't know so much about dongs here, guys. I'm like I swear I'm not. It's been very dick heavy this, but yeah, and then from that I was like, and it didn't actually go that well, but then it weirdly went well like months later.
Yeah, okay.
And I filmed some stuff with like traveling with my dad, and then because I was actually just like talking with that sort of British accent when I came back a little bit, so I was like, I'll film myself like pissing Sarah off, like doing the voice. That's like when you return home from the UK, and that was probably one of the biggest one that like went big sort of last year. And then I didn't I wasn't like super strict with like I'm gonna post twice a week. Like I was just like, I'll just sort of have a bit of a crack.
Yeah.
And then so then it sort of got a little bit of traction, and this year I've just been like, nah, I'm a try hard now. I'm trying hard. So and it's weird because it's just like it's funny that even with radio you sort of get a fair idea of like what works or what's considered like that did all right numbers. But yeah, man, I don't know, for some reason like Borat impressions and me putting tape on my nose and pretending to be Voldemort is just like it does well. And I liked as I was saying with like getting more out of the same thing. Like I used to be like, oh okay, I did that funny Harry Potter thing that got whatever. It got a few million views. I was like, well, I better not do Harry Potter stuff for a while because then it's embarrassing because I'm doing the same. But like me doing Harry Potter impressions at my wife, I've done like 9 of them now.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like literally at a point they were just like getting bigger each time. So I was like, well, do what works. You know what I mean? Don't be ashamed. Like,
exactly.
and also realistically, everyone on social media like has a thing, right? Like it's like, oh, that's the girl who does that, or that's the guy. It's a little bit like do there are. It's a little bit like repetitive like that. But I suppose, I don't know. And what I like about it though is it's sort of a like, and obviously like Sarah hams it up a little bit. Like she's quite a sweet, lovely person. I'm like, hey, I want to film a video, but she hams it up. But that comes from quite a genuine place as well of like me doing voices at my wife. Like that's like literally what we, that's at my most comfortable. I'm like, that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah, cool.
Like I've always done voices, and even when I like used to do stand up, like I used to have like voices in, and then after a while I was like, oh, like no one really does that, and like I used to like feel like I don't know, like ashamed or like for example, like my first year at Triple J, I wasn't going to start like rolling out impressions because I'm like, okay, well people like hate my guts, so I'm not gonna felt like a like you have to put yourself out there even more.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're like, oh, here's some Borat. Like, shut up. So it's funny that I'm, when you were talking before, like earlier, Riley, about how so, oh, do you feel like you have to be like a different version of yourself and that sort of thing? I like how I've been able to get a little bit of traction this year from like doing something that is quite genuinely me.
Yeah.
Rather than like, oh, I'm not like, fuck, I got to do another one of these things. Dude, I weirdly like Borat a lot, and I love Harry Potter, and I like Star Wars, and like, I don't know, I like doing voices. So it's nice when that translates and it feels like a genuine sort of thing. So who knows? It could yeah, it's been fun, but it's sort of could all stop tomorrow, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough. No, it's good. We love it. We're big fans. And I think that seems to be the sentiment from everyone on TikTok as well. There's not many.
Where'd you get that fire wand from?
Oh, dude,
Yeah, it's fucking dope.
yeah, oh my god. So that's the thing. Someone actually sent me that, and they're like, "Dude, you should like buy this thing." And I was like, "Frickin', like, yeah." If you've not seen it, it's like this. It's like Voldemort's wand, but it like shoots fire. Anyway, I was surprised I got through customs. To be honest, I got it from this like Chinese website, and I was like, "That's never going to come." But it was like $100, and it's like there's like little bits of paper that are like sort of soaked in fuel, almost. Well, it's like soaked in like lighter fluid.
Yeah, right.
And then it's like you leave it out to dry, and then it's sort of like crepe paper almost. And then you like rip off a bit, like 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, and you like pack it in with like a, like those old guns
Like
where they
it's
had
a
to,
mallet
like,
thing,
like
Yeah, right.
yeah, like a musket,
Yeah.
The bayonet's the knife on the end of the, when you had to like push the pole in to like push the bullet down or whatever. So yeah, you like push it in like that, and then it's just like a little spark in there. Like you charge it, and it sparks, and it shoots out this flame thing. So yeah, I sort of just that one went all right. I was just sort of doing it around the house. And it's funny, I did one recently where I bought this Palpatine mask.
Yes.
Dude, that took like 3 months to come. I bought that so long ago, and genuinely I was like, I'll be able to sell it after. Like, someone will want it. And I spent like $1,300 on it. And like,
It looks good.
Yeah, I know, but now I've got no more videos to make with it, and no one's and I was like, nah, the resale value on that'll be good. So, but yeah, I don't know. I suppose now I'm investing a little bit more in it as well. I'm like, I bought a ring light the other day, guys. Okay. And green screen, which I haven't tried out.
Green screen.
Yeah, it was like $50. Fucking green screen from Amazon. Like, it's pretty crazy the next day sort of delivery. But I'm like,
That's what's behind you right now.
yeah. I'm actually on a beach somewhere. I've just made it like a professional setting behind me. But I suppose that's also been one of those things this year. We're like, okay, cool. Well, we got moved, so you're not doing breakfast anymore, and now I'm like right now, for example, I'm speaking to you guys, and as I mentioned, I got work at like 2:30, so it's like when my like wife's at work, I'm like, what else are you going to fill your day with? Like if I'm like sitting around like watching TV all day or just like pissing around, it's not really
That's
ideal.
fair. So you just
like,
buy random shit instead.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, well, this thing is a bit of a project, it's just like a fun thing. Honestly, it's sort of to keep myself occupied, really. Like, just having little ideas and like trying to just see how they translate. So it's sort of been my little side hustle this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, cool. We love it. We are mindful of time. You're obviously somewhat busy.
Got a golf lesson to get to.
Yeah.
Golf lesson.
How the other half live. Before we do finish up, have you got any advice for people like us who are sort of trying to get into the industry that you are working in, obviously toiling away at community radio and doing the podcast and whatnot as well?
Well, dude, I've got to say, I mean, you guys are doing all the right things. Like, I mean, the fact that you're in community radio already, incredible. Such a professional setup. I've done lots of different pods here and there, and not many are as pro as you guys. So, I mean, the fact that you're sort of starting out and doing all this stuff, I mean, like, yeah, you've been great, and especially all the gear as well. It's very much you've got the gear and the idea, which is important. So yeah, man, it's and I would say the only other thing I'd add, and which I don't know if you do or not, but just like reach out to people, like I said, with reaching out to those people at different stations, and even just like cold calling and being like, hey, we're MacPack, like we work in community radio, or I suppose a lot of people also think that they just sort of wait for things to pop up. Sometimes you got to sort of beat the door down a little bit, and like I think you'll find like most people are like there are some pricks, but most people are like most people are pretty good in the radio game. So if you reach out to people, you guys slid into my DMs and like, hey, want to chat? Of course. Like, and if there's ever any other questions you have or anything, I'm always here to chat. But I'm sure there's lots of people like me that'd be happy to help as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the advice I'd give to anyone giving it a crack.
Perfect. You're a good man. Before we do finish up, as we do with everyone that comes on the podcast, we award them with a VI pack cap.
That's right.
So it's a bit like the cricket. I don't know if you're invested in the cricket at all, but they all have little.
Jackie Green.
Yeah, essentially. So they all come with a little ideation, a little number on either side of them. So you're getting cap number 27 joining the
right.
crew.
Nice. I like that.
Tim Blackwell
Darwin, you
has
get the number.
Tim has 26, Matt O'Kine 24, Liam 27.
27. There you go.
I love that. Yeah.
So we'll get that one out to you, mate. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, especially to chat to someone who's sort of done the whole community radio thing and worked their way up the same way that we've sort of been trying to as well.
Yeah, man. Oh well, it's like, as I said, you're doing all the right things, and it's the best place to be. We're lucky to be in an industry where you can sort of start in the community game and work your way up. It's sort of, there's not many gigs where you can just be like, oh yeah, I have like no skills. I don't know, I can just start doing the gig. So yeah, it's a cool place to be, and you're doing all the right things. So keep it up, fellas.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, mate. We really appreciate the time.
Cheers.
Cheers, fellas. Thank you.
What a legend!
Boys, it's pretty cool to think about. And now we've talked to Tim Blackwell, who's on air nationally from 4 till 6, and Liam Stapleton, who's on air from 6 to 8.
So what, you're chasing someone who's doing 9 till...
We need the afternoon shift.
Who do you want now?
Chrissy Swan.
Who does that lunch hour?
Get her on.
Riley just wants to say that we've done Nova via the podcast.
We did Nova.
And we also had Matt O'Kine, obviously, and then we had Liam, who took over from Matt.
Correct. Look at you putting the puzzle
We're
together.
getting all these people work in radio.
Yeah, no, it's very good. It's good to get some insight as well. He's got some funny little stories and some anecdotes, but some nice stuff as well around like more the education piece.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As
a
to
lot
how
of
his journey,
insights.
how his journey sort of went about.
Because obviously Tim came from the school background, studying radio, and Matt came from the comedy background, being a stand-up.
And Tim was an individual who's sort of not the nicest possible way, like bounced around to do different
Yeah, he was
roles
always
within
Tim
the station.
Blackwell, not like Hamish and Andy.
Yeah, where Ben and Liam have come together as a package deal. They brought the show no matter where they've gone. Tim's been able to bounce around and basically be a part of every show that he wanted to be.
No, it is crazy that they like met at the radio station. They weren't like mates ahead of time.
Ben and Liam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they've just stuck.
Terrifying, like 30 minutes beforehand, you're like, well, no idea about anything that this guy, especially like we have a bit of a benefit in the sense that we've known each other for quite a while. But imagine like rocking up. It's tough meeting someone for the first time, let alone then jumping on radio for like 2 hours with them.
I wonder if they still have that show. I'd like to listen to it.
Oh, I reckon it would be pretty similar to some of our. Yeah, it wouldn't be super flat.
It wouldn't be Ben and Liam right now.
No, not at all.
Because it was... No,
Cause-
it wouldn't be. It's quite
They didn't know each
Because
other's
they
names.
didn't.
Yeah.
Trying to work out who's Ben and who's Liam.
The first one they did Liam and Ben.
Could you imagine like being asked to do something with someone on Radio Freo, just you, just like a random person you never met before?
Or
Could
you and
come
someone
do-
else.
Yeah, could you come do 2 hours tonight
Just with someone.
with a rando?
Yeah, and then that's your career.
It'd be terrifying. Not terrifying, just terrifying from a standpoint of being like, man, I got no idea what I'm walking into. This person and I might not get on.
Yeah, like,
And
would
the
the
only
show
thing-
be better if it was just him by himself or me by myself? Because at least I know me.
Yeah, but then I guess you are just, if you're coming in to do your first one, you're not thinking like, oh, in 10 years, we're going to have to be moving houses together to go to this other. You're just thinking, oh yeah, whatever, we'll do one
Why not?
show, see how it goes.
It is an interesting point.
Who made that call?
If Joe gets crook over the next couple of weeks and there's just some random old man around the studios,
Get him in. You never
he
know.
could be with us. It could be Jake Jr. and Dave.
Jake Jr. and Senior.
I wonder if I wonder if Ben or Liam ever thank the gentleman who called them and asked them to do that shift together. Because without him or her,
Yeah,
we wouldn't have the 6 to 8 slot.
sliding doors.
You know?
Man, there's many ways to cut it.
And that Nathan guy.
I wonder what Nathan's up to these days.
Nate.
I love how he says they have a producer. They didn't know what they did. But they had one.
Does anyone
I do want, does that guy just like doing the emails?
push pencils?
Who knows? But yeah, fantastic chat. Hopefully everyone got a little bit out of it. And had a few laughs as well. It's good. It's good to get a little, because obviously you know these people, but it's good to get a little bit of a cheeky look behind the fours.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because obviously when we're on the pod, when we're on the radio, we're like presenting the show. But coming on to do an interview, a bit more like, this is me.
Yeah, and get to tell the stories about the shit that you talked about on the radio,
Yeah.
like the skid pig stuff.
Yeah.
The fact that they were funding it out of their own pocket, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
Like Joe won't even buy us coffee, and he's on multi-million dollar contract.
Coffee is going up.
But yeah, fantastic. So massive ups to Liam for getting involved with the show. We couldn't be, more thankful.
Yeah, good on him.
Huge.
Excited to meet him in the future when we head back to Melbourne.
Yes, for
when
sure.
the Pies are there in
When
the last
Pies
weekend
win
of
the grand
September.
final in a month.
I was gonna say, like, there's a fair chance we might come back to Melbourne, but probably not.
Depending.
Not this year.
There's always
Pending
next year.
Pies.
Boys, until we do this time next week, with who do you want? Chrissy Swan?
Yeah, the Swanner.
Stay safe.
Have a Swanny day.
Swan
with
draft.
Chris
Yeah.
Swan.
I like
That's
that.
what it'll be called.
Until we do this time next week, stay safe, stay blessed, and always remember to
Go give your mum a hug.
it's Chattin now, but not forever.